Dogman, battles, polar bear. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I've got a story for you that took place in the very late 1960s. I had been drafted along with a buddy of mine I'll call Lyle, and we talked each other into fleeing to Canada. Neither of us knew anybody up there, but we didn't want to end up in body bags, so we ran. I've had many conversations with people who felt that what we did was wrong, just as I've had many discussions with those who felt that what we did was justified. All I know is what I knew then. I wanted to survive, and I don't trust the government to be on my side. That's any government, any of them. Even if I had known that we would have been confronted with the Dogman, I can't imagine that I would have made any other choice. Most people who encounter the Dogman survive, as far as we know at least. I guess nobody really knows for sure. Lyle and I tried to settle down up in Canada a few times, but the places that didn't make me paranoid made him paranoid, so we kept going further and further north until we found ourselves staying in a remote cabin in northern Ontario in the vicinity of a place called Otter Rapids. If you're wondering what it's like in and around Otter Rapids, the answer is, it's cold and snowy, and you get snowed in pretty easily, so you better keep food and supplies on hand, and you better keep your vehicle in the best condition you can, so that when the roads are cleared, you can go get more food and supplies. Sometimes it gets too cold to drive, and that was something that we had to learn the hard way. We were driving back home to our hovel, loaded with food and other necessities one night, when our car just stopped working, and we puttered to a stop alongside a wall of snow 7 feet tall, plowed on either side of the road. We got out, looked under the hood, experimented with a few different things, then realized the car was just not going to start. I thought we should try to walk back home, but Lyle reminded me of two things. One, we had more food in the car than at home, and two, if we tried walking back through the night, we might freeze before we got there. I asked him what he thought we should do, and he pointed out that the sun should be coming up in about another 4 hours, so he thought we should keep ourselves warm in the car and wait it out. The car might start in the morning once things warmed up a bit. If not, surely someone would have driven past us by then. Even if they couldn't help us, we could send word along with them to send out a tow truck or some other means of rescue. He was right. By the morning, there should be at least a little traffic. We just had to survive the night, keeping each other warm and having ourselves a little picnic in the meantime. That sounded good to me. At some point during the night, Lyle woke me up and asked me what that sound was. I listened, and I could definitely hear what he was talking about. I had no idea what it was either. There was a muffled sort of tumbling sound, and you could feel the car bouncing or shaking slightly from it every so often. To me, it sounded like some kind of machinery rolling in the snow, but Lyle pointed out that machines repeat the same sounds over and over. This sound kept changing. While we were discussing it, some kinds of very animalistic noises erupted in the middle of the muffled, tumbling sounds. Both of us ducked down instinctively, and if I looked half as dumb as Lyle did, then I looked pretty stupid right then. I wanted to get out and look around, but then again, I didn't want to do anything of the kind. You have to remember that from inside the car, we could look forward and back, but there were tall white walls of snow to our left and right. We both surmised that whatever was happening up on top of one of those snowbanks, either the left one or the right one. Since the left one was a little further away, I tried my best to get a view over the top of it by moving my head as far up as I could go inside the car. I really didn't see very far over there, though, so the effort was pointless. That didn't stop me from trying, though, since it was basically the only thing I could do in that situation without getting out of the vehicle. As I was pushing my head up into the car roof so hard it hurt, something crashed and rolled off the closer snowbank to the right, then landed hard on top of the car. This, for me, was like being punched in the brain, so I got knocked silly and I was down for the count briefly. When I woke up, I had the headache of all headaches. When I strained to get myself up in a sitting position, I noticed Lyle staring wide-eyed out the left windows with a look of horror on his face as he was backed all the way up toward the right side of the car. Looking where he was looking, I saw a big, yellowish-white, hairy monster, and I screamed. I genuinely thought I was looking at an abominable snowman. That's what I thought I was seeing. I could not tell if I was looking at the front or the back of it. I just saw fur pressed up against the windows on that side, and I felt the car rocking. Was the Yeti trying to push the car into the snowdrift? Talk about waking up to a confusing and shocking scene. I was really struggling to make even the slightest bit of sense out of anything, and Lyle seemed too far gone to try asking anything of. Then, the yellowish-white wall of fur moved away from the windows, and I could soon see that I was looking at the back of the creature. And then, past the light-colored fur, I saw dark gray fur moving independently. In other words, there were at least two big animals out there, and they seemed to have fallen off of the snowbank onto the car and then onto the plowed snowy highway. The Yeti dove onto the other creature and the two rolled on the street, each attempting to bite, rip, and tear the other one to pieces. It was then that, for the first time, I could see that the Yeti was in fact a polar bear. I knew there were some polar bears in captivity or sanctuaries around there, so I assumed it had escaped. You see, I had thought that polar bears didn't come that far south, but I've had decades since then to look into it, and it turns out that Otter Rapids is considered part of the southern edge of the polar bear's turf. So most likely that bear was not an escapee. It was more likely an actual wild polar bear that had for some reason strayed from his clan. However it got there, it was a giant beast, and as fast-moving and savage as it was immense. It swung its arms in wide arcs, seeming to be landing many blows on its opponent, which it was also constantly attempting to bite. Both creatures were covered in snow at that point, which was flying everywhere as they scuffled and rolled all over the snowy highway. The other creature did something to the bear that caused it to howl in pain and to rear up on its hind legs, crashing backward into our car all over again. This time, it was only obscuring the rear window, and I got my first decent view of what he had been fighting. It was a dog. Or a wolf, but a giant one. A massive, impossibly huge dog that rose to all fours in a threatening manner, its claws digging deep in the snow as it bared its prehistoric, caveman-looking fangs and gums to frighten that polar bear. I don't know if it succeeded, but I know I wet myself upon sight of that grimacing monster mouth. The big wolf dog leaped through the air, landing with its claws in the upright bear's shoulders and digging its long fangs into the opponent's neck. It turned out, when it was on its hind legs, it was even taller than the polar bear. The enraged bear threw the dog backward. The wolf backed off a few steps on his hind legs, but he never dropped back down to all fours. He advanced again like a boxer, like a human being in other words. It looked surprisingly steady on its hind legs, and I couldn't believe what was happening. An idea occurred to me to try the car engine again, even though the sun was still at least 2 hours away. The only thing that seemed to be happening was I was making the car whine, and I was probably going to flood the engine. I was about to give up and stop when the upright walking giant wolf slammed his paw, which looked shockingly large and hand-like, into the driver's side window, cracking it. It then slammed the side view mirror, knocking it out of place and almost tearing it off the car door. I backed out of the driver's seat, but I had gotten that wolf thing's attention, and now he was more interested in me than in the polar bear. He walked around the front of the car and started slamming his hand-like paws down on the car's front hood, loudly and violently. I was freaking out, and I turned around to see if Lyle was over his state of shock yet. He was not. But while turned around, I looked out the back, and I noticed the polar bear sniffing at our trunk, or boot, as they say across the pond. We had a lot of food in that trunk, and I think the polar bear had smelled it, because it seemed to be trying to figure out a way to open that trunk up somehow. "Duck down," came a weak voice out of nowhere. Lyle was coming back to his senses, and he was telling me to duck down. I hid myself as well as I could under the glove compartment, and after a while, that seemed to calm the angry Dogman down a bit. Out of sight, out of mind, as they say. I think it forgot why it was slamming on the hood, and its attention went back to the polar bear, who I was getting nervous might actually get into that trunk. Soon, the two of them were making terrible noises at each other all over again, and it looked like they were about to return to rumbling in the snow. An odd observation about the Dogman. When it would threaten the bear, it would go down on all fours like it was going to jump up on that bear. The polar bear, on the other hand, would rise up bipedally and roar down at the dog, holding its massive paws out in front of it, or else over its head. In other words, the polar bear tried to make itself seem as tall as possible, as it wanted to frighten off the Dogman, whereas the Dogman seemed to feel that getting down and threatening to jump up was the most frightening thing that it could do to intimidate the polar bear. I don't know what that means, or if it even means anything at all, but it's something very specific that I remember about the two of them and how they fought each other. The two hairy monsters started banging each other into the car all over again. This time, I felt like I was going completely insane, and I became furious. I leaned over and beeped the car horn, which made both the creatures stop fighting and leap about 2 feet straight up in the air in fright. That gave me a feeling or a sense of power for the first time since this had all started. When they came back down, I confidently beeped again, hoping it would scare the creatures off. Used to the loud sound, all the second beep had achieved was to focus the attention of both animals on me instead of on each other. Meekly, I slid back down and hid under the glove compartment again, and both hairy demons forgot about me and resumed fighting with each other. This all went on for longer than I care to remember. I was hidden and getting cramped in every muscle I had, but I could only make out tiny snippets of the action from my secreted position down where I was. I'm not sure how long I endured this situation, but it was certainly longer than I could endure it if I were back there today. A young man can put up with far more than an old one, obviously. Speaking of old man, I was thinking of how my old man would be laughing so hard if he could see me trapped the way I was. When I left home to go into hiding in Canada, he told me that God would make me pay for my cowardice. The only reason he hadn't called the authorities on me was my weeping mother begging him to let me go. Thinking of my mother got me even more upset because I began to honestly believe that I would never see her again. I thought I had accepted that possibility when I moved north, but I don't think it had really sunk in until that very moment. I forced myself to block out all emotions and memories, though, because the present moment was already overwhelming enough. I didn't need to add guilt and remorse on top of it all. It was around that point when I heard the sound of something approaching from outside. I mean, something on wheels. A vehicle. Sure enough, when I peeked over the dashboard this time, I saw a van driving in our direction. A VW van, I think, but don't quote me on that. Believe me, that was the most exciting thing in the world to me in that moment. I felt a new ray of hope that we might be getting rescued, and this nightmare might be coming to a close. I also saw that the dawn had begun, and the night was ending. I sat up and waved my arms, but doubted the driver would see me. I looked over to see the situation with the two giant manimals, and my gaze fell upon the fight, just in time to see the bear collapse from exhaustion, and probably blood loss as well. That was when that van started beeping their horn. I think they were beeping at the Dogman and the bear like they wanted them to get out of the way. That van didn't seem to have any desire to help Lyle and me out in our predicament. They only wanted to get where they were going. My heart sank, and I felt rage for whoever was driving that thing. The Dogman did too, as it ran toward the van, barking and completely flipping out in their direction. It was like he was saying, "I've had enough of you humans and your car horns. Beep beep my canine butt, all right?" He slammed his hands. Let's face it, they were more like hands than like paws, and he slammed them on that van's windshield. I saw little spiderweb cracks appear in the glass. With one blow, he did that to a windshield. Think about that for a second. After battling a freaking polar bear for literally hours, this 8 or 9 foot tall monster man had enough energy left over to crack the van's windshield. Can you even imagine such a thing? I saw it with my own eyes and I was like, wow, dude. I was more blown away by that than anything I ever saw in my life. Anything. He was so strong. He was like stronger than the laws of physics should have allowed him to be. The van put itself in reverse and started backing up out of there. It looked stupid, like some kind of scene from Benny Hill. I could even imagine the dumb Benny Hill music playing as that van skidded backwards and the Dogman advanced, barking like he had rabies or something. That van got far enough away from the Dogman to attempt to turn around, but the Dogman took advantage of that slowdown to run at the van and begin beating on the side of it. I saw the creature leave a big dent in the side of that thing. He was as strong as an elephant. It was truly breathtaking and terrifying at the same time. When the beat-up van succeeded in turning all the way around, it sped out of there so fast that it hydroplaned all over the snowy highway, skidding sideways into one wall of snow, then into the other one, until it eventually got under enough control to outpace the furious beast man and get away. I would have laughed if that weren't my one hope of escape being turned into comedy relief by the dog-headed ape man. The Dogman was so angry that he stood there, heaving air into and out of his lungs, watching the van disappear from sight. His breath was creating almost a cloud of steam around his head. His chest would expand, and his shoulders would rise. Then he would breathe out, and his shoulders would go back down. He was made of nothing but muscle, hair, and things that could slice you apart. I marveled at his physique, wondering as I looked at him if such a creature could even possibly exist. The Dogman turned around to begin walking toward us, and I banged my chin getting back down under the dashboard as fast as I could. I bit my tongue in the process. It was extremely painful, but I couldn't do anything but make myself small and try not to think about the excruciating pain. Well, the werewolf-like creature returned to his defeated polar bear opponent, and he tossed the bear over his shoulder like he was carrying a bag of dirty clothes to the laundromat. Then he lifted the creature up on top of the snowbank, and he climbed up there himself. I was wondering if he would drag the bear across the snow or lift him up again when Lyle said, "Try the engine," and scared me so badly that I jumped up and banged myself again. "Try the engine, man," he repeated. "The sun is up. Try the engine." I did as commanded and was shocked when the thing actually turned over. I then climbed painfully up into the driver's seat so that I could actually drive. I really hadn't expected it to work, so I had turned the key while still scrunched down on the car floor. I have no idea and no memory about what happened between then and taking a lot of aspirin back at the house. I was in severe pain all over. Plus, it's been over 50 years since this happened. Obviously, it could have turned out much worse than it did, and I'm grateful that I lived to tell the tale. After all, this story could have been called Dogman Eats My Butt, instead of being called Dogman Battles Polar Bear. Thank you goes to Skitsy's mommy. She's got more power than a real tsunami. Because of her, we bought pastrami. So thanks to you, dear Skitsy's mommy. Please join us in thanking today's executive producer, Skitsy's mommy, for making this episode possible. In return, we sent her the links to our weekly Sunday Secret Uncensored stories, far too wild to run on this channel. In addition, she gets to check out our 21 hours of archived, secret, uncensored stories as well. And so can you. Just join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com, or do what Skitsy's mommy did and click the join button under this or any of our videos to become a channel member. Now here's Henry Lee Dogman to fill in any details I may have left out. Hank? Thanks for watching till the end. If you liked what you saw, please consider clicking like on the video or sharing it with your friends and family that you think might also be interested. If you would like to see more of our work, please consider subscribing and hitting that bell icon next to the subscribe button so that YouTube will alert you when we put out a new video. To become a channel member and gain access to our special perks, you can click that join link under each of our videos. Another option is to join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. You can join for as little as 99 cents on YouTube or $1.50 at peterbernard.com, and that gains you access to our weekly secret uncensored episodes. If you'd like to see our 21 hours of archives of uncensored Dogman stories, then please join at the $3 level or above. To get to watch our shows in advance of the public, please join at our $10 level. That gets you all the perks. We're working on figuring out how to add the $10 level to the PayPal Club too. Hopefully that will happen sometime before August of 2021. If you join our channel memberships, you need to check our community page here on YouTube in order to get the links to the secret videos and other perks. If you're in the PayPal Subscribers Club, Peter will email you all the news and links himself. Once joining the PayPal Club, which is Peter's homemade club, please give him a chance to see that you've joined and to compose you a personal welcome email, as none of that is automated. But whichever you join, we'll name you an executive producer for the next available episode. Do you have a scary experience that you'd like to share with us? You can email us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or call our Scary Stories voicemail hotline at 804-LA-SCARY. That's 804-537-2279. It's a Google voicemail box, so that means it keeps cutting off after every 3 minutes. If your story is longer than that, please keep calling back and we can piece it together on our end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.